This is Synthchaser from synthchaser.com. Welcome back to this video series where we're repairing an Oberheim OB-Xa. In the last segment of the video, we went over what work we needed to do, and we recapped and rebuilt the power supply and the voice boards, and we changed some dip switches on the pot board. Now the thing that we're going to address is the keyboard. The keyboard is very noisy. Some of the keys are sticking up a little further than others, and they sound really noisy. Also, the bus bar is dirty, and some of the notes are kind of re-triggering when you hold them down. So we're going to pull the keyboard out of the synthesizer, and we're going to remove all the keys. We're going to change the bushings, and we're going to clean the bus bars. So to get the keyboard out, we open it up. Again, remove the screws here and here, 4 screws, and you can open it up. And there's a single ribbon cable that runs from the keyboard to usually the lower motherboard here. This particular keyboard has a Kenton MIDI kit installed, so the keyboard cable actually runs to the MIDI kit, and then from the MIDI kit down to the lower motherboard. So that actually makes it a little easier, because normally what you'd have to do is you'd have to remove or fold up the remove the upper motherboard to get to remove that cable down below. So we're going to unplug this ribbon cable here. Actually, to get it out, looks like we're going to have to take this guy off, and then we'll be able to remove this ribbon cable. And then we're going to need to unscrew the keyboard, and it'll lift up. So to unscrew the keyboard, there's several screws underneath that are accessible on the bottom of the synthesizer. Don't turn the keyboard up on its back or side or anything like that to try to get it out. What you can do is you can move it, and I'll close the lid. You can move it like this, so part of the edge sticks off, part of it sticks off the edge of the workbench, but the majority of it is still on there, so it's not going to fall off. And then you'll have access underneath to unscrew these screws. So I'm going to remove the screws, and then I'll come back. So here, only 3 of the 6 screws were actually holding this keyboard in. So possibly some of the noise that we were hearing with the keys were the keys hitting the metal frame here, because the keyboard might not have been lined up. Yeah, might not have been lined up right. So with the screws removed, you can just lift the keyboard out like such, and then you can close up and move the synthesizer away, and we'll next remove the key caps. So we'll remove these screws here, and then take these keys off. I've removed all the screws, all 61 of the screws there that are holding the keys on. And to remove the key, you tilt it forward and then slide it off. And you can see these keys are really dirty. So what I do whenever I do a rebushing of a keyboard, I also wash the keys. So I'm going to put them in this bucket, and I'm going to take them off and put them all in the bucket, and then I'm going to fill the bucket with warm soapy water. You can see they're really dirty. There's also dust down there in the keybed, and we'll get to clean that out in a bit as well. So I'm going to fill the bucket with warm soapy water and let it sit for a few hours. And then I'm going to scrub each of the keys with a scrub brush, my special key scrubbing brush, and then let them dry. They're going to need to dry completely, so either blow them off with compressed air, or let them dry for several hours until they're completely dry. Because when you put them back on, they're going to rest on these metal keys, and if they're wet when you put them back on, these will rust. So I'm going to remove the rest of these, and then we're going to get these soaking, and then we'll come back to get these metal keys off. You can hear, actually, it wasn't that the keyboard was out of line, it's just that these are really noisy, and you'll compare that when we're done with it. So I'll get the rest of the keys off, and then I'll come back and check in with you. So I've got all the keys off and soaking in warm water, and now the next step is to remove the springs that cause these keys to pop back up after you press them. So the springs are located at the back of the keys, and the black colored keys have a colored spring, and the white keys have a black or gray spring, and they have different tensions, so they need to go back in that same order. So the way that we remove these springs is simply with needle nose pliers. We can get in there and free the spring, which is hooked over the back here and hooked to this little lip on the back of the key. I'll zoom in with the camera so you can see detail of that. So those are the springs that we're going to be removing. I've taken one off there, and I've got 60 more to take off, and I'm going to sort them by color. Now with all the screws removed, it's time to remove the key levers. Sometimes you can just push up on them and they'll come off. Other times you'll need to use a pair of flat nose pliers and grab this metal tab here that's kind of holding them in place and twist it gently at about a 30-degree angle. And then you push up on the back and it comes off, and you'll need to just tilt it off the front. I've seen, so you'll remove all of these to get to the bushing here. And I'll show you the bushing up close. The bushing is what the key rests against when it, sorry, I'm a little tangled. When it stops, it's on this, it mounts to this little hook, and in this case this bushing is very brittle and it just disintegrated in my finger. It's made of rubber, it should be soft, so when the key comes up it hits on that bushing and comes to a nice smooth stop. And also when you push it down it comes to a nice smooth stop when it hits the top of that. This is called the key stop, and the bushing is really responsible. If your keys sound, well, clacking, it's because the bushings are shot. So we're going to get all of these keys off. I've seen another video where someone numbers these when taking them off, and you can certainly do that if that helps you to get them back on in the right order. But basically, they're interchangeable. The long bar is a white key, the short bar is a black key, and this keyboard starts with a C, so it's pretty straightforward to figure out what order they go back. Just to make it easier for myself so I don't have to think about it, I set them aside in the order that I take them off and just pile them up there. I don't need to number them. Just set them there in a big row, and then I'll get all of these key levers off and come back and show you what it looks like. But I've removed all the key levers from the key bed, and you can see there's an incredible amount of dust in there and filth on the bottom of the key bed. Also, you know, I showed you, I took this bushing off for demonstration purposes, but there were other bushings that were completely missing, which would explain a lot why the keyboard was clacking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to vacuum out these keys and clean up this key bed, and then we're going to remove all the old bushings. In this case, they're brittle enough that they might just pop off like that with your finger. Like that, they'll just crumble. In some cases, they're still rubbery, and then you can use an X-Acto knife. It's hard for me to do this without, and slice them, and then peel them off that way. So I'm going to remove the rest of the bushings and clean things up, and then we're going to install some new bushings in just a moment. We're going to make sure that the key bed is level first, and we're going to clean the key contacts on the bottom side. So let me get the bushings off and clean things up, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now that we've removed the old bushings and vacuumed out all the dust from the key bed and the keys, and taken some allergy medicine because of the dust, we can clean the key contacts. So to clean the key contacts, we're going to flip the keyboard over. Since we have the keys removed, these keys, you'll see there's a little shaft coming off of them. There's a plastic cap on the bottom that connects to that, and that's what kind of holds the the wire for each key. So when you press this, it moves the wire. So basically the bottom line is we have to be careful when we turn this over because those little plastic caps are now just dangling on the wires. And if we tilt it forward, they'll all slip off the end of the key contact wires and we'll have a big mess on our hands. So to turn the board over, we're going to turn it over to the back. So we're going to lift it up like this and turn it over on its back. And you can see here the little plastic bits. So I'm going to move the camera closer so you can see the next step. We're looking now at the bottom of the key bed, and I'm going to show you basically the mechanics of what makes a key work when you press it. So normally the key is like such, and this shaft comes through all these holes that line the bottom of the key bed, and there's this little plastic cap that the wire runs through, and this cap snaps on or is pushed on to the end of that shaft. So when you push a key, it will basically it will push this wire into this bar here, which is called the bus bar. So this is a power source, and basically these are just switches that are going to turn on and off each of these keys. So when the key is pressed, it's this little fine wire is pushed into the bus bar, and the switch is turned on. When the key is not pressed, the little fine wire is away from the bus bar, and it's an open switch, and there's no power going through it. And you can see it's basically a diode matrix for this one. Others use resistors and control to generate a control voltage, but because this is a polyphonic keyboard, it needs to know which keys are depressed when there's multiple keys pressed. So the thing that we're going to do down here, it's hard to see, but there's a lot of oxidation. Even though this is a gold-plated bus bar, it still tarnishes over time. And then when the key is pressed and the wire comes in contact with it, if it doesn't make good contact, either the note won't trigger or it'll trigger multiple times. And so while we have this keyboard apart, we're going to clean the bus bar. And the magic tool for cleaning the bus bar is actually just a regular pencil eraser. So this is the kind that retracts, but I'm going to show you on the top of the bus bar, and maybe I'll come around to the other side since I'm not left-handed. And basically I take the eraser and I rub it on the bus bar, and now it's much shinier than it was. So this top of the bus bar that I'm looking at is actually the bottom, and that's not where the little fine wires touch. So you actually need to stick the eraser down underneath and clean the bus bar from both sides. This was a brand new eraser, and I'll show you the crud that's coming off. You can see all that was on the bus bar. So basically, without bending these fine wires, work your way down the keyboard and clean the bottom, the underneath side of the bus bar where the keys make contact, and go all the way down the keyboard, and that's what I'll do, and then I'll show you the next step. So now that the bus bar has been cleaned, we can make sure that the key bed is level so that all the keys will sit level when we put the bushings on and reinstall the keys. So we'll turn the keyboard back over again, making sure that the back side goes down. And I remember there was one key that was sticking up over here, but that was one that was missing the bushings. So what we can do to see if the key bed will be level when we put the bushings and everything back on is we can take a straight edge and we can set it down on top of the key bed. And then we can look and we can see if everything is going to be level. And here things are quite a bit uneven. Particularly the keys down here are drooping a bit. They're pushed down. So what we can do is we can, with some pliers, very gently raise the key stops for the ones that need to be moved up. And we can get this all level. And it's an iterative process. So we're going to go and we're going to look at it and we're going to raise or lower the ones that need to be raised. We'll put the straight edge back on and confirm, you know, whether it's level or not. And then when everything is just perfect, we'll go and we'll put the bushings on. So I'm going to get these level and then I'll come back and put the bushings on. We've got the key bed as level as it's going to be. And now it's time to install the bushings. The new rubber bushings go on the key stops here. And I sell a kit with the rubber bushings in my website. They need to be lubricated. And if you want me to, I can lubricate them for you before I ship them to you, or you can lubricate them yourself. They go on a certain way. So there's a wide part on the top and a narrow part on the bottom, and then you just slip it over the key stop and push it on. And maybe I'll do the other one without blocking with my wrist. So I'll push it on like this and push it into place. So then we're going to put the bushings on all 61 key stops, and then I'll show you the next step. So we've got the bushings on, and now it's time to install the key levers again. So the key lever has a little lip here, and you slip that over the bushing, and the little shaft here will go down the hole, and there's a hole here that goes on the post that you took it off of. And you can test to see how the key will be by kind of simulating the spring. I push down on the back and make sure that the key springs back up, and the key should kind of fall on its own volition. So one thing that you can do is, if it's a little too snug, you can loosen this by sticking a screwdriver in this slot and ever so gently bending it. And now the key it'll kind of fall down on its own. But also it's a little less sluggish now when the spring pulls it back up, and that's the main reason for shooting to get the keys to fall down like that. So I'll do another one. I just take it and slip it over and push it on. That one kind of drops a little easier on its own. If you bend the little tab to get the key off, then just bend it back very gently to make sure that it's snug on there. And I'm going to go down and do this for all 61 keys, and then I'll be back for the next step. So with the key levers back on, the next step is to install the springs. Remember that the colored springs go on the black keys, and the gray springs go on the white keys. There's two sides to the spring, and I'll see if I can hold it so you can see it. There's the side with the loop, and that goes on the key, and there's the side with the hook, and that goes on the key bed. So I'm going to go reinstall these and then check back with you. With the springs installed, now we can turn the keyboard over and install the little plastic caps that guide the key contact wire. So again, be careful to only turn it towards the back. Otherwise, all the key contact caps will slip off. So I've turned it over, and I'll zoom in so you get a better look at this. So we're going to take these plastic caps and we're going to push them onto the little stalk that comes through the hole from the key lever. And we're going to go down and we're going to do this to all 61 keys. And then once we're done, we'll move on to the next step, which is adjusting the key contacts to make sure that they all trigger at the same time. Now we're going to go through each key and make sure that the key contact wire contacts the bus bar at the correct point in travel when we push the key, and that it's consistent for each each key, so one key isn't super sensitive and other keys don't trigger at all. So I'm going to push this key down, and you see the key lever gets moved up and contacts the bus bar. So you hear a little click at the end of the travel, and that's good. We move on to the next one. And it's about the same. This one here is not making any click. So this key contact is not contacting the bus bar. And what we can do in that case is, with some tweezers or some needle nose pliers, we can gently adjust this key contact so it will make contact at the appropriate point in travel. So we're going to go through and we're going to make sure that all of these are making contact, solid contact at the appropriate point in travel. And then we're going to flip it back over and we're going to install the keycaps. Installing the keycaps is pretty simple. First, stick on the black keys. And then when all the black keys are on, install the white keys, and in the underneath the bottom of the key it will say what the note is. So this is a C, so they have to go on their specific key. And just like when you took it off, you kind of tilted it forward. To put it on, you have it tilted forward, and then you push it back like that. And then go through and install the screws, and the keyboard will be ready to be reinstalled into the synthesizer. The keys are all back on, so the keybed is all back together, and the clacking is gone. The only noise that you hear really is the key contact making contact with the bus bar, which you're supposed to hear. The keyboard is all level, the keys are all clean, and it's ready to go back in the synthesizer. Before I do that though, I'm going to take the bender box out and take a look at that switch that's broken. I'll show you how to get the bender box out. To remove this bender box, to gain access to the circuit board underneath, there's 4 screws underneath the bottom of the bender box, on the bottom of the keyboard. So I've moved the keyboard so the bender box is hanging over the edge of the table. And I've removed those 4 screws, and now the bender box will lift up and you're able to turn it over. And besides there being a lot of dust down here, there's a connector here that you can remove to get the bender box out. But from looking at things, there's some additional cables on this one that are coming off the Kenton MIDI kit that are hard soldered onto the bender box. So there's this one, and it looks like this one's also coming from there and is soldered in back there. So I'm going to have to work on the bender box here. So I'm going to remove these screws here on the top. Well, actually no, because I only need to get this board out actually for the switch. So actually the only thing I need to do is disconnect this connector here and then unbolt these 4 bolts, and then I'll be able to pull that board out and take a look at the switch. But first I'm going to clean up these pots and clean all the dust out of here. Then I'll get that circuit board out and we'll take a look at the switch. I've removed that circuit board with the little buttons from the bottom of the bender board. This is what the properly working button does. It clicks and springs back. The one that's not working, I can push it up and get it to click, and then it will go back down, but it won't spring back into the unclicked position. So I'm going to desolder this button from the board and see if I can repair it. Otherwise I'm going to have to replace it. So I was able to get the button repaired. I desoldered the button from the board. I disassembled it, and now it is clicking properly. In the event that you have a button that you can't repair, I sell replacement buttons that are nearly identical to the old one, and they have the same pin pattern on the back, so they'll fit in the socket of the old one. I sell those on my website, synthchaser.com, but in this case I was able to repair this button, and we'll put it back in the board, reinstall this board into the bender box, and then install the key bed into the keyboard, and I'll show you what it looks like when I put it all back together. The keyboard is reinstalled. I added a missing screw so this keyboard won't move around or come loose or shift or anything like that. The bender box is in place. The funky little wire that was hard soldered onto a capacitor here on the 5-volt rail is resoldered in place. The keyboard ribbon cable is plugged back in to this, in this case, the Kenton MIDI board, but normally it would be the motherboard. And then this wire, which was obstructing that to the MIDI jacks, is plugged back in. So everything is put back together. The button here is repaired. Now the next step is to do a full calibration. So we start the calibration by making sure the voltages are adjusted properly, and then we go through and we adjust all the parameters of the keyboard, particularly the voice cards. We want them to tune correctly, and we want them to scale properly over the full range of this keyboard. So in the next video I'm going to show you how to calibrate the Oberheim OB-Xa. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me for the next installment.